Discover how AI is revolutionizing marketing strategies and learn actionable insights from industry expert Britney Muller to stay ahead in the digital landscape. This is PhraSEOlogy AI with your host, Filipe Santos. As a digital marketing professional specializing in SEO for over 20 years, I've worked with companies from startups to global Fortune 500 companies. Learn how to gain an unfair advantage from AI as we uncover tips, tools, and strategies for a killer edge. Britney Muller, a powerhouse in AI and marketing, with a rich history at Hugging Face and Moz. Brittany is now leading innovative projects at datasci101.com. And she also offers an amazing course called Actionable AI for Marketers, which basically dives into AI foundations, gives you ideas about content creation and generation, focuses on data-driven SEO and some marketing automation. So it's perfect for marketers to really leverage AI and those that are eager get into it and start to apply it to some of their problems. With that, I guess I would love to just pass it to you, Brittany, if you had anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, beautiful introduction. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to, really empower others through AI education. That's been my mission for quite a while. And so to be able to do that through avenues like this or the actionable AI course is super fun for me. And I just love it.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew it would be a great conversation because for those that don't know, Brittany's extremely passionate and motivated to help others and also to just like experiment. So the big deal is that she actually experiments with
Yeah.
everything. And so you don't have to. It's the key thing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
We're talking big business here. As AI adoption in marketing increased by about 250% back in 2023, the global market was also around 100 billion at the time, but it's expected to grow 20-fold by 2030, according to Six City Marketing. So, Brittany, you've witnessed a lot of this integration of AI in marketing over the years. You've seen some people experimenting. What's your take on AI's evolution and like the role it has in the field of marketing?
Yeah, I think the overall evolution, we're still so early on. It wasn't that long ago that I had many conferences encourage me not to speak about AI and not to talk about machine learning because they didn't feel it was relevant in 2019 and 2020. And now, with sort of the advent of ChatGPT and all these large language models, we're starting to see more and more integrations, but we're still extremely early in that evolution. Marketers and SEOs, we're working hard to discover what are the valuable use cases, right? What are those clear workflows that deliver value? And then on the flip side of this, we see, Google quickly integrating AI into search and affecting search results and all of these things. And then at the marketing large scale, it's become a buzzword. Okay, AI is kind of slapped onto anything and everything, and it doesn't necessarily communicate machine learning or AI technology in the way that we know it today. So there's a huge amount of variance, true types of large language models and artificial intelligence and the buzzword community. So you got to be careful. It's important to learn the basics so you can navigate all of these things strategically and keep your head on your
Makes sense.
shoulders, I
Well,
guess.
prior to 2023, and like, correct me if I'm wrong, but we had machine learning. People were trying, like those that were kind of a little bit more inventive were using machine learning. But why do you think machine learning didn't actually get into the masses as easily as the LLMs and all these tools like ChatGPT? Is there like a clear reason?
Yeah. So I remember talking about machine learning on stage at conferences in 2017. And I don't think it stuck or took off because people were still struggling to understand, like, what is it? Right. It's one thing to describe, like, it basically builds the computer program for us to determine if images are of a cat or a dog. Right. And I think at that time in the machine learning space, there weren't tons of applications that we could slap onto marketing or SEO that necessarily made the most sense. And so I think it's just taken a while to find those applications. It's super interesting though, in the AI world, we always talk about these bottlenecks. And for a long time, there was a bottleneck of labeled training data or just any training data, really. And then at some point before that, there was a bottleneck of compute power, right? And now the bottleneck is neither of those things, it's ideas. It's people regular people that don't have technical expertise, but might have brilliant ideas for this technology. That's what's holding different industries back. And so it's fun to kind of plant the seed of here's what these systems are really, really good at. Here's what they're not good at. How do you think you could, play with that? Or what tasks do you think that we could, assign an LLM to do? Right. And oftentimes, like with strategic outreach, for example, the AI aspect in a workflow, like automated outreach, might play a super, super small role in all of the steps required to do that. And so it's very, very interesting. Where again, I still believe we're quite early on, but making huge leaps. And marketers and SEOs using this technology effectively are seeing
I love it.
results.
And given that you've done so many, you've actually put out quite a few courses out there from, you know, no code adoption to actually learning a little bit of Python. You've been trying to upskill SEOs and marketers for quite a while. What do you see as some of the challenges that folks face pretty early on in adopting these AI technologies, and, how should they kind of get above that?
I love this question so much because I think it's something that most people don't think enough about. And what I notice, and unfortunately, I tend to notice this more in women than I do men. And that's extra heartbreaking to me, who's trying to, get more women in the space. We need more women in AI so badly. But there's this interesting sort of barrier to entry in that it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to experiment with prompting an LLM to do various things when you don't get it right on the first try. But that is the nature of this technology is failure is your path forward. You're learning what it's able to do through those road bumps. And so I want to, empower people with that information and encourage them and motivate them to just keep going, like keep testing it. Don't let the fact that Midjourney didn't create the image you wanted or ChatGPT didn't create, a proper output that you were looking for to hold you back from further experimentation, from further integration with these tools. Failure is truly part of the AI learning process. And I would love to see newbies get more comfortable with that and sort of take it in stride.
Yeah, I noticed when I took up your course, there were a lot of folks that were really motivated, but they also didn't really understand how these came together. But they were very fast. I think both fast learners, and
Yeah.
you were also very good at teaching the concepts that they needed to know in order to experiment and to go further in terms of their comfort level. Would you kind of be able to
Yeah.
share any specific examples of where AI has like significantly improved marketing outcomes? Maybe some experiences that you've had or some of your students?
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of that process too is like confidence building, right? It's a lot like when we got started in SEO, you have to see some of those gains to build confidence, to keep venturing into the space. With AI specifically, I have seen incredible things happen in the marketing AI space, particularly around content. So, using like vector embeddings models to at scale quickly analyze both your site and several competing sites content to identify where are your content gaps, right? Where where are your competitors outperforming you in ways that contextually you're not competing with them, right? What are those topics? What are those categories? You can do some really cool things with that landscape of information. I do this with clients. I'll overlay that with their Google Search Console. And so it actually looks like a giant knowledge graph, and the pages are clustered by content. And then the size of the nodes represents, I can modify it to rank or traffic. I usually have it reflect traffic. So we will notice, oh, there's actually this bigger category of content is bringing in most of the traffic, but this category over here is what we know converts, right? How do we maybe bridge the relationship between the two? or create gateways to these other content areas that make sense. Similarly, internal link optimization. I know, we had Everett Sizemore come in with his AI workflow that he published on the Moz blog that he kind of created during one of my courses, and it's amazing, right? Same thing, uses vector embeddings, which again, we are now changing how we look at websites to reflect AI technology. Using vector embeddings to analyze your site is exactly how AI systems are consuming your content. It's contextually based. It's not we're moving from keywords to semantic, like more rich context understanding. And so once you're able to pivot that mentality, you're able to do really powerful things like Everett groups, the most related pages together and then is able to surface like what are the pages that are highly related to one another, highly similar, but don't link to each other, but should, right? It's incredibly powerful. Yeah, there's so many things you can do. I also love the fact that there's different tools and methods out there that analyze search results through an LLM lens. So consumes all of the content of the top ranking pages, identifies common themes, common topics, length, mediums, is there lots of media, all this stuff. You can automate that research and create really powerful content briefs and scale them for your team so that now, they're focused on creating highly competitive SEO content versus doing all of that legwork that was previously required to be competitive.
That's the thing that when you struck on those points, I recall the obviously doing SEO the old way and having to do a lot of this in a bunch of spreadsheets, and it was all imperfect and you didn't have any help and it took a long time. And now we're talking about being able to use a machine that does this a lot better to analyze things that we clearly want and to reduce the time by, I don't know, maybe 70, 80%, right? Especially if you got the
Yeah.
workflow down. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun too to think of like, what are the little improvements as well? We often overlook the tasks that might take 15, 20 minutes of our time each day. But over the course of a year, that's
Mm.
over 2 weeks of work. So I think there's, big, powerful workflows like the ones I sort of outlined. But then there's also the little ones like quickly helping you respond to customer support, right? Or drafting up different things to summarize a meeting or follow up notes and cleaning up stuff, summarizing articles for your PR team. There's so many powerful things you can do at
Amazing.
scale.
Survey Monkey included some interesting statistics from marketers that they did in some of their surveys. A couple of examples were 93% of marketers using AI to leverage the generation of new content, 81% using AI to uncover insights quickly, and more interestingly, 90% utilizing AI for faster decision making. All of these ideas kind of make sense, but it's funny to hear that, right?
Whoa. Yeah. The decision making one has me a little confused.
I
I'd
actually
love to
want
know
to
more
dig
about
in and
that.
probably see what they were asking specifically about and maybe what some of these use cases. But the decision making makes sense in a way because when
Yeah,
you've got multitude of choices and you have to like forecast something, maybe it helps you identify what decision you want to be making based off of the data. That's the only thing that could come up in my head. But I'd love to ask you specifically like how you think AI can enhance marketers' content creation and personalization, because I think that's a big piece of what AI can help with, right?
definitely. Definitely. It's funny. So it certainly can. And I think there's kind of good, better, best ways to go about doing that. I often say that I believe LLMs worst capability that they're able to do is create content. They use the same words over and over again, right? They're quite wordy. They'll say delve, unlock, unleash. Those we hear the same tones, the M dashes everywhere, lots of bullets, right? It's the same look and feel that we know as like AI slop. And so where I think content marketers can really power this up is in a couple of ways. One is through maintaining your unique writing voice, right? It's easy to quickly view something and know that, oh, someone interesting wrote that, right? Or there's interesting anecdotes and, humor or things throughout that we as humans naturally crave. And I think is really important to maintain. That also being said, to create strategic content and then get, AI support. How can this be better, more robust? Is there any topics or things I'm not considering with this piece of content? You can really use an LLM as an assistant of sorts to support you in that process. And then something that I want to like yell from the rooftops is the fact that, AI has zero ground truth. It has zero, which means it has zero knowledge of the world that you and I live in today. It has no real world experience. AI has no friends. And because of that, it's going to have no unique opinions or stories or anecdotes or, the things that make us human. This is why we see companies like Google doubling down on their relationship with Reddit because it supplements their AI systems with the things that AI can never do. They can never have that real world human experience, opinions, forums, anecdotes. So maintaining that throughout your content, I think having original photos, those strong quotes and opinions by real people, set yourself apart from the AI slop because everyone's going to be doing that. You have to differentiate yourself. And I'm seeing a lot of people strategically use the human in the loop method. So this is where you might have an AI system set up to, like we had talked about earlier, do that research of the search result page, the competitive content, put together a brief, outline different things, and even start to create some of that content. But there has to be a human in the loop to really review, refine, improve, fact check those things. And I know you said this is coming out at the end of the month, and my favorite tool of all time, Wordcrafter, is launching, which you got early access to in the course, but it's launching next Wednesday, which is so exciting. So I think that's like a really cool example of a tool that does all of that due diligence. And then it allows you to, once that brief is created from a data driven, roundup of information and insights, you're working with the LLM to create the content. It's not just the LLM or whatever model you choose. You got to kind of work hand in hand with the tool to create more efficient and powerful pieces
Thank you
of
for mentioning
content.
Wordcrafter, Brittany, because I had
Yeah.
actually interviewed Federico way back, like last year, early on. So now it's come full circle. He's had lots of testing. He's built it out to a very mature product, and he's actually focused on what we need as marketers. So I love that, and it's really exciting to see it actually launch. And I'll probably like end up doing something with that later.
Do it. I also think I think I still have a coupon code for like, I think it's 25% off for the first 3 months or something. And there's a free trial in there just
We
with
should
my
include
name,
that.
Brittany, if anyone
Yeah.
wants. Yeah, definitely check. It's worth checking out at least. Like, go get your hands on it. There's a great free trial. I'm just in awe. And like, he's been working on this for almost 2 years. This isn't one of those like spun up AI money grabs. This is a very brilliantly built, strategic, really AI assistant for content.
Absolutely. Not sponsored at all here, but I know that for a fact. I've tried a lot of lifetime deals and a lot of different tools that also spun up content and
Yes.
tried to do what Wordcrafter does. They were clearly money grabs. So it just didn't feel the same, or it was just meant to do the bare minimum. This is not that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's sadly sad
Exactly.
to say, like you mentioned, like how LLMs tend to use the same words. And it sucks because I used to love using the word delve pre LLM. Yeah, it was like one of
Oh,
my
really?
favorite weird words that nobody used, and now it's like everywhere. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it is everywhere. I'm
It's
so
okay.
sorry.
I'll just have to
I
like dig
stole
into
that
the
from you.
dictionary and come up with some new words that I want to use. I
It
know
was
it's kind of sad, but
thesaurus.
that's what we're in now. Ruin it for everybody. Oh, with that, we'll switch over to a slightly different conversation, which I know you're also a proponent of, and that's kind of it's along the lines of like this word usage, ethical considerations. So, ethical considerations when implementing AI-driven marketing strategies. Any opinions?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many. I think not enough people are aware of the fact that they magnify societal biases. It's inherent in this technology. They can do different things to try to protect and limit some of those things from coming out. But my concern is that it comes out in ways that people sitting at the table might not realize, might not notice. And it really starts to kind of skew, you know, children and people's worldview once they come across these things. It perpetuates all of these biases. And so I think that's another thing for marketers and SEOs to be super mindful of is, evaluate it through that lens, right? Is there diverse representation in here? Are there other things we could be thinking about? And what blows my mind too, Philippe, is the fact that AI is built on like the science community. And we know that having a diverse, like representative data set lead to better models. It's just a no-brainer. The more you can get, a data set to represent, a real community or the world that we live in, the better outcomes we get. And for whatever reason, we continue to see just gross oversight in the fact that these things spew racism, they spew sexism, all of the mid-journey images, they're hypersexualized, right? And so it's important again just to be aware of that and like silly examples of this too. Like I do quite a few podcasts, right? And I was on one that generated an AI image of me that gave me this like massive chest and cleavage and I was just like that is not like what I look like. And this feels so weird and, to his defense, like, I don't he was just trying to create cool AI images, but I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so uncomfortable," Like, it's so bizarre. But we have to look out for things like that and to be more thoughtful, right, about the AI representation of things and what that's
And I have
doing.
an opinion on this. I feel like it's capitalism. I feel like the corners are cut because they're trying to
Yeah.
get things out too fast. And in training data like that, clearly, this is the weird part where I would say being human is a bad thing. If they're trying to train the data, they actually need to strip some of that out because we have our stereotypes and
Yes.
there's like cultural bias and there's societal. So if you do that, then I would imagine that the models would be a lot better, right? Like you said.
It would be so much better. You are so spot on. Oh my gosh, you're exactly right. And there's efforts to create these like nutrition labels for data sets that demonstrate the fact that yeah, these languages are very minimally represented in the data set. So you probably won't be able to, get high quality outputs of these languages or these types of people. Yeah, you're so spot on. But unfortunately, there's a transparency problem in AI. So all of this is behind, lock and key and OpenAI and other companies don't disclose the training data. And they've discovered that more is better for now. I think that we're quickly reaching the ceiling, but yeah,
I can tell you the
it's a bummer.
Aborigines and the Amazon tribes are definitely not represented here.
Exactly. Exactly. Do they have any yeah, who's not represented online, right? Like who doesn't and that's the thing that when we talk about intelligence, it's like with these models, it's only like web text. Think of like all the stories that have been passed down generation to generation or things that they do on a regular basis to maintain like clean drinking water or just different life skills that AI has no knowledge of, right? I think it's so important
I love
to
that, and that's why I
recognize.
appreciate people who are using the tech for good reasons and trying to make it better. In the case of Wordcrafter, for
Yeah.
example, I know that Federico's been like
Yeah.
honing it down so that when you put in your criteria or you put in your prompts, it follows to a T, and then it also has its own pre-programmed, guide rails, which are nice.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I love like he's added more like tweaks to that or there are more ways that you can control some of those things too, which
Absolutely.
yeah.
Martech.org released some stats, and again, I like to start from this point because it gives us some perspective. But from its own findings, it found 32% of marketing organizations have fully implemented some sort of AI, and 43% of them are still experimenting. So, from that perspective, what do you think emerging AI trends should or will be for marketers in the next couple of years? I know it's maybe we'll call it a wave because I've been thinking like we used to think about future trends as years, but I think things are moving so fast that it could be
Yeah.
just months, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I foresee like some of the boring things
Mm.
really taking off. So incorporating reg type chatbots that are connected to all of your employee documentation, where there might be all these different, onboarding guides and office information and, maternity, paternity leave, parking, all this stuff that newbies, or if you feel like you just have a question, can quickly query against those data sets to quickly get that information instead of scouring and wasting time going through some of that material. Similarly, there's so many use cases in like the e-commerce world or, high research industries where you can upload massive data sets that you can then query against or get insights from. And it's funny because this was, oh my gosh, this was over 10 years ago. The AI community at large was saying that, the biggest thing in the next 5 to 10 years with AI or machine learning, it's going to be recommendation systems, right? So think of like Amazon's like next recommended products, think of Netflix and this and that. And like the industry used to joke, like, it's not the sexiest thing, right? It's not the coolest, craziest application, but it's incredibly valuable, right? And that's going to support all of these other things. And so, yeah, I think for SEOs and marketers, it's also some of like those boring things that are perhaps overlooked at this time, right? But could start to be automated in terms of like even filtering out your email better, right? Identifying like what's a qualified lead from an unqualified lead and having an LLM retrieve research on like this company or this email address. What does that look like? So that your salesperson or your business owner, they aren't starting from scratch anymore. A lot of those things can start to be supported through various LLM or AI
Yeah,
techniques.
that's a big deal. And you mentioned like the knowledge management. I remember that was such a pain in the butt. And now the fact that we can do
Yeah.
this brings us a little closer to having some confidence that we've got the knowledge that we need in order to make better decisions going forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it automates so much of the documentation, the planning, the briefs, the more boring work so that we can get back to the basics. We can get back to creative marketing campaigns, to what's really going to connect and resonate with people. What's like a really strategic content play right now, right? I think it levels you up in so many ways. Another quick example is just like quickly getting Reddit insights on your particular industry product topic has been a game changer for so many of my clients, right? We are now able to spin up real time sentiment on them, maybe their tools versus their competitors, and what people are talking about. What are they liking about your company versus these competitors? And again, this is just like a whole next level of marketing and messaging and SEO of like we can keep a pulse on things right now unlike ever before because we're able to use LLMs to really kind of surface these insights from larger volumes of data and
That's a perfect
information.
segue. I was going to ask you about how professionals, especially in the marketing space, can upscale and stay relevant given all this change and given that AI is kind of getting implemented in all kinds of different ways. So, what would you say are the best ways for folks to stay up there and continue being sharp and in demand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think through like getting your hands dirty, right? I think you will have confidence talking about these systems and this technology through experience. And so, testing out some of the new models that have come out. Get and get into Claude, especially 3.5, 3.7 Sonnet model, in my opinion, is better than the GPT models. It's just more, in my opinion, it provides better programming support, You can save things easier. I'm a huge Claude fan, but continued experimentation and continued learning. I think especially for those technical SEOs who have always wanted to like dabble a bit more in the tool space, in Python programs, you have no excuse now. You just have no excuse because Claude is your very best programming friend that can support you in building whatever the hell you want. I built an AI mode, basically like scraper Chrome extension, all with the help of Claude over the weekend. And it's amazing. It grabs the citations, the links that are being provided, and it can put it into a CSV for me. But that's the power of this stuff is you can have your specific problem you want to solve for. Go use something like Claude and it will support you in the creation of some of these solutions. And nothing feels better than solving a real world problem like that. And going from like 0 to 1, it is incredibly rewarding. It is so fun. And I used to buy developers lunch or beer. And it feels so sad and like kind of embarrassing to admit some of this, but I was so desperate to get better at pandas and Python and working in my terminal and understanding how to properly set up repos. And I had all these questions. And I remember I would pick out like which ones will help me the most. And I got to get through as many of these as I can, like while I get them beer. Like I was begging for help because Stack Overflow isn't helpful. There's lots of resources, books that aren't the most helpful. So when you're able to bring your specific problem to something like Claude, I don't think people realize how powerful that is and how quickly you can start to solve some of these things that you want to solve
That's a
for.
great use case and a great scenario that you've provided because I remember that was a big deal, right? When you're in the midst of actually doing your work and you don't have expertise in a specific area, but you really need it, you have to lean on those that have the experience. And in this case, now you have a little bit of an assistant to help you there.
Yes, exactly. And it's so funny, even like when you had said, like, yeah, we like live in spreadsheets and we do all this stuff by hand. I still deal with a lot of spreadsheets, unfortunately, but like I never want to write another Excel or G Sheet formula as long as I live. Like I know the ones that I know. And for those that I don't, I literally will copy some of the data set, explain to Claude what I need to do with this data, and it just spits out the perfect formula. Like that is
It is. I
incredibly
can't tell you
powerful.
how many hours I've toiled on a very complex formula, only for like now to be able to create it in a couple of seconds.
I know, or like
Yeah.
regex, like, oh, the
Well, I mean,
worst.
what's interesting about that whole thing, right? And going down that pipe, I guess, I think that like a lot of the LLMs are kind of making me feel reminiscent of changes and updates because like there's so many new models and so many new updates coming out, different versions and flavors for Claude, for ChatGPT, for Perplexity, for even DeepSeek. And it's like, okay, how does one actually like figure out what they should be using? I don't know if you have any tips on that, but like it just has been sticking in my head. I'm like, why would somebody? Would you consistently just stick to one, or would you move on to like try other ones?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I don't know, because I think there's really, a lot of value to digging deep into a tool and understanding more comprehensively, like what it's able to do and what it's not do, and not get so distracted by the noise. And so I think there's a ton of value there. I think it's also important to note, like all of these companies, all of these tools, they're still figuring it out, right? We are their training data. How we're using it, how we're engaging with it, we are the training data. And so we see these things morph every day, every week, right? There's the reinforcement learning from human feedback or RLHF. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think to try not to get too distracted, but to be aware of them, to maybe test different things out and to stick to one or two that you get really comfortable with. But I do think it's good to have, like, a bit of an arsenal of tools too, now that I think of it, like, different tools are so good for different tasks, like Notebook LM ever since Google came out with that tool, I've been obsessed because you can upload all these sources, you can query against it. Now you can create a podcast with, some audio support. It's just wild what you can do with that tool, and I know They built out that team in the last couple months a ton. Now pulled people I used to work with at Hugging Face who I know are just like next level genius. So I'm dying to see what new features they come out with soon. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's
That's a
gonna
really
be
good point. And
crazy.
I'll see if I can find this video for everyone. I might link it in this podcast version. But there's this gentleman that actually tests them side by side with use cases. And that could be very helpful because then, you
Ooh,
kind of get a sense of which one you want to use and then kind of stick to that if you trust the team to kind of develop it
yeah,
in the right way.
yeah, exactly. Oh, I
Well,
love
I
that.
definitely want to get a little bit of insight for the audience here. So you've given quite a ton already, but I just wanted to see if there's like a quick 3 to 5 actionable tips that you can give for marketers here.
Yeah. I think, you know, cat's out of the bag as far as AI goes. And so we have to learn how to kind of navigate this, but how do we increase the odds of our brand, our client, our names showing up in AI outputs? And I firmly believe that, brand mentions are the new backlinks simply because of the way that this technology consumes text. Making sure that your name or your clients are showing up around contextually relevant conversations will be so important now and moving forward to increase your odds of showing up in some of those outputs. That being said, a lot of those are also still using organic search results as sort of, a retrieval augmented generation, which just means, they have a foundational LLM like ChatGPT, but they're using the top so many results to, improve and provide some sort of updated insights on this information. And so ranking will still be important, but I would double down on like that contextually relevant text and content on your site and across other sites as well will be really, really important. I think embracing AI tools, right? Like I mentioned, like being comfortable with failure. This is a new technology. Dare to suck at something new, right? Like just get in there, play around, have fun with it. It doesn't have to be so intense or so serious. And I think the more that people have fun with these tools, the more that they experiment and, test out different ways of automating repetitive tasks or, freeing up some of their time to allow for more strategy and creativity will provide exponential results moving forward. So those are two big ones. Oh, I love the data analysis, especially obviously SEOs who are buried in information and data points. Like, how do you navigate some of that? Collab notebooks can turn you into an absolute ninja. I have a collab notebook for probably 25 to 40 different Google Search Console workflows. If a client wants to predict their future traffic, there's a profit forecasting model that you can build out in Collab that's all set up. And then you upload at least 3 years worth of traffic data, and it takes into account weekends, holidays, trends, you name it for your particular stakeholder. And it does a beautiful job forecasting. But you can also use, like we had talked about, Claude's really good at programming support, quickly providing the pandas code, which is a Python code to analyze data. It's used predominantly throughout data science and working with large data sets, but you can use your SEO data and do very quickly, just through one or two, 3 lines of code, you can do some incredible transformations that generates visualizations for reports, right? They're statistically sound. You're not putting this data into an LLM and hoping it gets it right. You're really using the LLM to support your notebook and data analysis efforts to be correct, to be accurate and reflective of the data that you have access to. And there's tons of powerful, quick things you can do with that. I think that in my opinion is preventing so many SEOs from going to the next level. And it's not as complex as most people think. There's probably 12 pandas functions that I have memorized that I feel like turns me into like it's a superpower during calls or meetings when a stakeholder asks something really specific, right? About traffic or keywords lost or this or that. And you can quickly spin something up to answer those really quickly. It's incredibly powerful, and it's just so much
I
fun.
feel like you
It's
might
so
have
fun.
to let people in a little bit on how you organize that, because that sounds fascinating, having, all these different, let's say, workflows or methods to getting what you need quickly. So you always seem as sharp as you feel.
Yes, exactly. And I actually, this is so funny that we touch on this because this was my most requested thing after I did a fundamentals of generative AI course on Maven, and everybody was asking, like, how do we do that, those pandas things you were talking about? How do we do like the notebooks and this and that? And so over a weekend, I think I recorded like an hour long, just like recorded Zoom or Loom or something where I walk through some of that. I don't think I've ever shared the link publicly, but maybe we can share it in the description here because I think that's a great and kind of quick crash course into the power of like Python slash pandas 101. And again, it's less intimidating than people think. And you have to go into it knowing that, you're going to stumble and fall here and there. But let me tell you, nothing is sweeter than getting a workflow just right or creating a notebook that does these things that I'm talking about. I also have a public GitHub repo from I want to say 2019. That's all collab notebooks that do different things for marketers and SEOs. If you just search GitHub collab notebooks Brittany or something, you should find it really easily. But that can also spark your ideas and get some new ideas
Wow.
flowing
Just
too.
wow. I know that's going to help a lot of folks out there, especially those that have been grappling with, how do I start using things right away? I'm trying to do my work, right? I love that.
Oh, yeah.
Brittany, amazing. I mean,
Awesome.
it's been amazing having you today and talking about all these topics. And I'll try to link as many of these things as I can so folks can get a little bit more into the stuff that you have and some of these really helpful tips and hints on how to go about doing it your way. I would like to encourage everybody to explore these tools, to kind of follow Brittany, to really like focus on how they can use workflows for themselves and for their role. And I want to kind of pass it to you, Brittany, to mention anything so that folks know how to follow you, where to find you, maybe even how to get to your course.
Yeah, I would love that. So I'm super excited about, yeah, I guess the Actionable AI for Marketers course that I put together. It's been a labor of love, blood, sweat, and tears. And I bring in some really cool guest speakers that help you put this stuff into action in a way that I don't feel other resources are currently doing. And aside from that, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm occasionally still on X, unfortunately, Threads as well. And then you can always shoot me an email just at
Perfect.
brittanymuller@gmail.com.
So we'll leave it there, but thank you so much, Brittany. It's been incredible.
Thank you. This has been so fun.
Quick heads up, I'm part of the Wordcrafter AI Champions program. Because if you love powerful AI tools for content marketing and SEO like I do, you'll need to check this out. You'll get 25% off on your first 3 months with my link over at wordcrafter.ai. I'll post it on screen and post it also in the description. And you'll be supporting the show while grabbing one of the best AI writing tools out there. This is certainly a win-win. Grab the deal while it's hot. Please support the show by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment. It's free and helps us grow and get even better content for you. And it's also appreciated.